Hi folks, and welcome to the Meaningful Money Podcast. This is session number 370. This is the podcast dedicated to helping you put your finances in order. My name is Pete Matthew, and I'm going to share with you everything you need to know and everything you need to do to secure your financial future. I'm here to help you make sense of money. Okay, here we are. Great to have you with me once again. And as many of you know, particularly if you're on the mailing list, you're on the mailing list, right? Well, if you are, then you'll know that Meaningful Money is 10 years old this month. And the podcast is just over 7 years old. If you're wondering why I haven't made too much of a big deal about that, it's been somewhat overtaken by the coronavirus. But you know what? That's fine. I'm not bitter. Now, when I started Meaningful Money, I was one of very few voices in the UK putting out decent, regular financial content. Now, thank goodness, there are more options than ever, and today I just want to introduce you to the newest personal finance podcast in the space. After the main body of the show, as usual, I'll look at a review that's been left, announce what we're going to be talking about next week, but before all that, remember, as ever, this podcast continues to be brought to you with the help of my friends at Seven Investment Management. They've been helping me out on here for ages, and I'm so grateful to them for doing that. So please do check out what they're up to. They're at 7im.co.uk. That's the number 7im.co.uk. I've known Kathy Harrison for ages now. She's a leading light in the world of paraplanning, and she's a bit of a force of nature. Several successful business under her control, as well as being a mum. Kathy reached out to me to get my input on the pilot of a new podcast that she and her long-term friend and colleague Joe Campbell were going to be putting out. So I listened and I laughed, and so I thought I'd get them on to explain what they're up to. Now, fair warning, there's not a whole load of actionable financial information today, but we all need a bit of light relief. So let's dive into the interview, but do stay tuned because afterwards I want to ask you a favour to help me mark the 10th anniversary of Meaningful Money. Remember, notes and links from today's show, they're at the show notes. It's the only link you need to remember. meaningfulmoney.tv/session370. That's meaningfulmoney.tv/session370. Here's my conversation with Kathy and Joe. Well, it's great to welcome Kathy Harrison and Joe Campbell to the Meaningful Money podcast. Ladies, how are you doing? Are you coping with isolation?
Yeah, I'm coping well. I think Kathy would probably agree that it's always good to keep me out of the room for a while and on my own and quiet. Production's actually gone up, I think, in Parasols. So I'm actually coping all right, though. I fancy a pint now, Lord, you.
Oh, tell me about it.
I'm getting to that point now. I can cope with all the illness and the death, but I really fancy a pint now.
Yeah, I do find that wine o'clock just gets earlier and earlier as the longer isolation goes on for.
For sure, yeah. I was on a virtual Slimming World meeting on the weekend, and I realised halfway through the Zoom call that I'd left about an inch of red wine like off camera to my left, and this was 9 o'clock on Saturday morning, and it was all I could do throughout the whole thing not to just reach and finish it off. I thought that wouldn't have looked good. 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, reaching for the cab
World call as well.
I know, not exactly compatible.
You.
If
you're trying to tell us something, Pete, if you've got something off camera that you need to get rid of right now, you can do it. This is a safe space.
Okay. Group therapy. Look, why don't we start by talking about who you guys are and what it is that you do and what got you to this point. Kathy, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Kathy Harrison. I've always worked in finance since I left uni. I started Parasols, which is a paraplanning company, an outsourced paraplanning company, nearly 11 years ago now, 11 years in June, which is crazy. And over that 11 years, it's what?
It is crazy.
11, I know. It's the blink of an eye, isn't it? Although we really enjoyed the 10-year celebrations last year, didn't we? We had a big party for it. And then, I guess over those 11 years, I've just got involved in different parts of finance. I launched a compliance company 3 years ago, and then a training academy last year. So kind of all within financial services, but different elements of it. But actually something Joe and I talked about years and years and years ago was getting finance more outside of financial services, so getting it more into the public domain and people being a bit aware of it and understanding A, that they need financial advice, and B, that actually it's quite an exciting place to work and it's a really fascinating career. So that kind of sat there as an unscratched itch for quite a few years until we actually did a webinar together last year. And I just really enjoyed doing a webinar, being able to kind of bounce off Jo instead of it just being me presenting. And that went down really well. So off the back of that, we came up with the idea of the podcast.
Cool. Jo, what's your history?
Same. Very similar. So Kathy and I met when we worked at a previous financial advisors. She left and set up Parasols. I stayed on for a couple of years and then joined her a couple of years after. Okay. So we've just been a really good team since, and exactly that, just kind of crusaders in the world of finance, kind of selling the virtues of finance and why it can be good and why it's a good career and it isn't maybe what you think it might be. Trying to just kind of break that mold. When we first started, I think we became such good friends and such good colleagues because we had a kind of a joint mission, if you like, against all of the stuffy old people that worked in finance, and it was just kind of Kathy and I trying to break that mold and change that vision. And you know, back in the day when I used to be young, that was a thing. Now I am the stuffy old finance. So there's that, but just exactly that. And so from day one, we've always just tried to say, you know, it's maybe not what you think it is. It might not be running a grey suit, it might not be the man from the Pru, or, you know, somebody in the bank, could be somebody different, and there's actually a lot to learn in finance that makes it a really good career.
I thought you were going to say, you know, like middle-aged, overweight white guys, and I was going to take massive offence, but you would have been right.
Middle-aged, overweight white girl. That's what I was going to say.
So why a podcast? I mean, you've given just a little bit about, you know, why you wanted to do something, but, you know, why a podcast specifically? And then maybe just a little bit more about what makes your new podcast, which is called That Mint Podcast, what makes that different to what else is out there?
Do you know what, Peter? I have no idea why a podcast, because the irony is I don't really enjoy listening to podcasts. I've never really listened to them. I think there's something about it being a nice, accessible medium, I guess, for people. And when you're trying to do something, the difficulty with finance and the reason why we thought there was the need for this, and clearly it's, you know, why you do what you do as well with Meaningful Money, is that finance in itself can be a bit of a bubble. And even when you want people to kind of see inside that bubble, it's almost hard to get out of it yourself in the first place. It's hard to make a splash that, you know, it's easy to do something and everybody else who's already in financial services hears about it and they might talk about it and they might say it's a great thing, but it's really hard to get through that barrier and kind of get it out into the public domain. And I think podcasts are probably one of the most accessible and the easiest ways of doing that. I think, you know, the ability of people to just stick it in and be able to listen to something while they're off doing something else. You know, with finance, if what we're trying to do is break down the idea of it being clumsy or difficult or hard to understand, and then you present it in any format that is difficult to understand, it would kind of contradict it. Whereas I'd like to think it's an easy thing to listen to, both because of the medium and because of our nonsense, which in itself is kind of reflective of what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, cool.
It is just one step in the process as well. We do blogs and we do articles and we do presentations. We also have done a couple of videos and things like that. So it is just one step in the process, but it is a very popular medium at the moment. And, you know, face for radio. So it's a reason.
So you're ever so glad I made you sit in front of a camera for this, right?
Over the moon.
So what is it then that makes That Mint podcast different, do you think? Yeah, I did say that, didn't I? Oh, mintiness.
Different. I mean, Jo. You know,
obviously.
She's different.
Special. My mum said I was special. It
is that. I mean, when we're doing the episode, so we're really lucky. We've got there's a company that helps us produce them. We've got kind of no equipment or skills or knowledge in terms of podcast producing ourselves. We've got our experience of financial services and the fact that we both got into it from a young age, which means that we're relatively young, but still with a lot of experience. That's kind of our thing. But the rest of the skills around podcasting is come from the company that we use. the production company, who are brilliant. And the thing that Mark there always says to us, because he listens to it obviously from the listener's perspective and what he thinks is different and what's good about it. And yes, there's we're kind of two, I'll keep saying relatively young because we're really not as young as we used to be, relatively young northern girls.
In denial.
Talking about something that is quite dry and making it less dry, but then also there's the fact that we can bring a lot of our personal experiences to it. So, we talk about the bad mistakes we've made with mortgages, or our inability to get our own wills in place, or me having life assurance but actually having no idea what it is or where the documents are. And I think it's that kind of relatability that, yes, we could go into all the technical stuff around finance because that's our experience and qualifications. So that's not what I think will resonate with people. It is that ability to just go, well, we're human too, and we've kind of been there, done that. And here's all the ways to probably not do it.
Yeah, that's generally the tack we take. Oh, this is what we did. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that will resonate.
Just something around, there's not that many experienced finance podcasts that are aimed outside of financial services or for a younger target market. A lot of the financial podcasts that I've listened to are brilliant, but they're still quite technical, and they're very much designed for other people in finance. Which is fine for me, but I couldn't give it to my grandma to listen to if she wanted to understand what equity release was, because it would go over her head. So it's just that kind of I don't want to say just using plain English and getting rid of the jargon and explaining things in a way that it's more digestible outside of financial services.
But yeah, you also couldn't get your grandma to listen to our podcast because you swear too much in it, and
she's dead.
Yeah.
That is a problem.
Limitation. That's why our listening numbers are so low.
I'm writing that one down because Nat is going to love that one.
So, other than navigating the afterlife, what are the sort of challenges that your listeners are sort of facing and that you want to address?
Which it's interesting actually, because we did some market research beforehand, but Mark, our producer from Second Draft, he often comes and says, well, what about this scenario? Because exactly that, he knows nothing of finance. And every single time we do any recording, he learns something new, despite him doing loads of research beforehand. So for example, if we're talking about mortgages, he'll go away and do a load of research and say, can you talk about this? Can you talk about that? And when we do start talking, he'll learn something new and he'll just go, oh. And then he'll stop us and go, I had no idea. Yeah, your phone fell out. So I think it's just that, exactly that, I forgot the question, but you learn something new every time.
Yeah, I think in terms of the challenges that they have, for a lot of people with financial services, you just almost don't know where to start. It just seems like such a big, daunting topic. Even if you break it down and you pick one part of it, like pensions or like a mortgage, even just that in itself can seem huge. And it's almost easing people in, giving them some, breaking down some of the jargon, talking about some stuff that they can understand and feel comfortable with, and then almost those first steps and kind of where you might begin to get into it. And I'd like to think that we'll be able to build on throughout future episodes and kind of take that into extra levels of detail, and you can do more on it. But it's very much at this stage just trying to make people realise that it doesn't have to be as scary as it might seem. That you can get to the bottom of it and you can make sense of it and kind of take control of your own finances.
Most certainly. So they reckon most podcasts don't make it past 7 episodes. So how many are you on so far?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Didn't you start?
Yeah. Oh, I know. But
how many have we done? 7?
Yeah, something like that.
Can we make this our 8?
Yeah. Yeah, by all means. Are you enjoying it so far? Because I've done everything as well. So I've done, lots and lots of video, fewer articles, but I still love podcasting the best. How are you finding it relative to the other stuff that you're doing?
I'm sorry, I'm just looking because a new episode's gone live today, and I'm trying to. Yes, it is. It's episode 7 just went live today. So
well done. One more, and you've made the elite.
We've got a couple in the bag as well, haven't we? We've got a couple in the bag. Honestly, you've thrown me completely there now. I really enjoyed the podcasting, although it is much harder than I anticipated at first. I thought honestly, I talk all day long. People are so sick of me. I can sit and talk about nothing for hours. But actually, when you sit down in a room and you get mic'd up and they say, right, okay, talk on that, it's so much harder, and we are so tired at the end of it, aren't we? We generally do a couple of episodes in a day, and that's all we do, and it's so tiring, isn't it?
They are, but
probably more so for you than me.
More so for poor Marcos to do all the editing. I would say exactly that. I think the first few were extra tiring because we did a pilot right at the beginning, and that was painful, just getting used to the sound of your own voice and trying to talk and not second guess everything that you're saying. Then the first few were quite difficult because we would still just slip into financial jargon and talking at a level which assumed an underlying level of knowledge, and we had to keep kind of pulling ourselves back to go, no, hang on a minute, put ourselves in the shoes of the people that are going to be listening to this. But then the last few have got easier because we're getting a bit more comfortable with it and a bit more experience with it, and then they just become more and more enjoyable. So yeah, I'm hoping that they go far beyond 7 episodes, just because I think we're starting to get into a bit of a stride with them, and kind of the listening numbers are going up and people are kind of starting to relate to it. So yeah, hopefully we'll be around for a little bit longer.
I've no doubt at all. There's still such a relative dearth of decent personal finance podcasts in the UK that there's definitely a market. And I would say the market needs different voices as well. It just needs different angles and voices and sets of experience to bring to bear on it. And I would, people have often asked me about starting a podcast, and they're always like weirdly keen not to, we're not going to copy you, or we're not going to tread on your toes. And I'm like, for God's sake, you could take word for word exactly what I said on an episode, and it would come across to a completely different audience. It would appeal to different people and would have merit in its own right. And so, the more of these sort of voices, the better, really, because it just adds to the sum of decent financial information out there, which is really important. Okay, I got a couple of sort of...
I really enjoy these as well, this kind of joint podcasting. You did one the other day, before London went into crazy lockdown on that day, didn't you, Kathy? Where you went and did you do one with somebody else? And that kind of thing. And one of the things that people don't understand about finance is just the community is, so it's such a good community, and people do help each other, even when you're supposedly in competition. So I do think that's...
got the same kind of mission and the same kind of aim.
Well, yeah.
Getting finance out there to people. So exactly as you say, Pete, it's not one person job, is it? It's kind of the more everybody can kind of get involved in it and bring those different voices, then the better impact hopefully we all have.
The more it is, yeah, for sure. Okay, a couple of quick sort of fairly rapid fire sort of questions. I wonder what the best personal finance book is that you've ever read.
Oh, Joe?
Right. So I'm just going to say right now that I've never read a personal finance book. And as soon as you said it, the first thing that came to mind when I saw the question that you sent over was, oh, well, the last finance book I read probably was Treasure Island. And then I thought to myself, oh, well, actually, that's probably how I live my life, just pretending to be a pirate and assuming I'll find treasure at some point. If you just go through your life, being a pirate because you're the whole time, then eventually the treasure will come. So to me, you probably shouldn't have asked that question, sorry.
Okay, Kathy?
Same. I don't think I've read a personal finance book, and the only one I could think of was JO7, which was my last CII book.
JO7? The CII exam? Man alive. Yeah. That's interesting, isn't it? You kind of assume that folks in personal finance would read personal finance books. It actually makes perfect sense that you might not, because you live and breathe it every day. So what are you going to learn? And surely you want to consume something else. Okay, favourite book of any genre then?
Yes, Pete. Yes, Pete.
Oh, my favourite book.
What's your favourite personal finance? Can you recommend one?
Yeah, for sure. Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. Easily the best personal finance book ever written.
Simple Path.
The Simple Path to Wealth, yeah. I interviewed him back in January, and it's the most popular episode of all time. I sort of rode the wave of his popularity.
Until now. Quick, go write a book.
You haven't got Robert Louis Stevenson on your books, have you?
No, I
Just
haven't.
saying.
I heard he's difficult to get on a podcast these days.
Again,
So
dead.
what about...
This is your problem. All the audience is dead.
Yeah, it is a problem. Okay, so rather than books then, what's the best or the most profound lesson you've ever learned in your own financial journey?
All of our lessons are poor, aren't they? The lessons, because you only ever learn from mistakes. I would say mine was, do not get 110% mortgage just before the property crash. That would be
Northern
my
Rock?
personal. Yes, do not get a Northern Rock mortgage at 110% just before the property crashes, or you will still be paying for it 15 years later. And it still have negative equity. So there's that.
Wow, that's a big lesson, painful lesson.
It is a painful lesson.
I handily learned the exact same lesson as Joe, and would also recommend not 110% mortgage ever. I think with mine, one of the things that I don't know how much it's linked to personal finance. We were talking about this recently, I can't remember if it was on a podcast episode, around income and salary, and the point that people feel kind of happiest. There's like lots of surveys around when people reach a point of happiness in terms of what they earn, and I think people assume that the higher your salary, the higher your level of happiness, and actually there's a very specific tipping point where you get to a point of being able to live in relative comfort, but still having a need and a drive to get up and go to work, because you still need to earn, because you haven't just got billions sat in the bank. And that's kind of your peak happiness. And then when you go beyond that, you get to certain levels of earnings where you then move into, do I have to put my child into private care, private education, or, I'm kind of almost keeping up with the Joneses, and then your happiness levels actually take a bit of a dip. And I think when I was younger, always growing up with no money, always thought, just need to earn as much as can. That's the only way to be happy. And actually, it really isn't. There does come a point where you just go, okay, but I feel like I can sleep at night, and that's the main thing. And now what I can do, because I can sleep at night, because if, my boiler breaks tomorrow, I can fix it. Now I can start to think about the future. And then that's where all the other stuff comes in that we talk about in the podcast around your protection and your pension and your ISAs, and how to then start doing it. So I think, kind of chasing it for the sake of chasing it, and thinking that it'll get you, I know the money doesn't buy happiness is a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. I think it really does, and kind of accepting that's quite important.
It does, however, buy you a boiler.
That's true. So have you got anybody in your lives
Don't put that in cups, do they?
No. Have you got anybody in your lives that has particularly influenced you, either in sort of life generally, around financing, career, or what?
I think Kathy and I had a very similar upbringing, quite a hard and poor upbringing, which we unashamedly talk about quite often. And I think our mothers were very, very similar in the sense that they had no money, but every single penny that they had, they gave to us, or they gave away, or they made sure that we had, everything that we could possibly need to do well in life. And I think that to me was a big lesson I learned, and it's what I pass on to my children, very much of, it doesn't matter if I've got a penny or a pound or £1 million, it's everything I do is for you and for your betterment and the next generation and that kind of thing. And it isn't about just, giving them £1 million because I don't have £1 million, but it is about, exactly what Kathy was saying before, about having that comfort and knowing that actually they'll grow up with less worry about where the next meal's coming from or the next rent payment. They won't grow up with that worry, and that gives me comfort. And so I think my mum was my mentor in that respect. And I think Kathy and I share that, that kind of, that painful upbringing, and it's helped to shape who we are today and the way that we think about money.
Kathy, you go along with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is that. I think I as well am wired a bit weirdly, in that I just can't kind of sit still, hence all the different businesses and then the podcast, and then there's 18 other things in the pipeline. In fact, I even just messaged Jo yesterday and said, right, I've got this idea, I'm going to start this new company, because I haven't got
just before bedtime, and she wonders why I don't sleep. And then this morning she started talking about branding, and I just thought, I'm going grey.
But I think in terms of, I've never really had a particular business mentor, and it's something that I read about a lot. Whenever you get your 7 tips to be a successful entrepreneur. It's always, you should definitely have a business mentor. You know, it's the main thing. And I've always felt a bit like, what am I missing out on? Like, why haven't I got one? Should I have one? But I think it's not as straightforward as just kind of one person. You probably take lots of little bits from lots of little people, and you kind of take what you need and what fuels you, and probably get little snippets of mentorship from different conversations and the things that kind of inspire you and get you thinking up these new ideas and doing things. So there's not kind of any one, other than, as Joe said, kind of that drive to, you know, that was kind of instilled at quite a young age. I wouldn't say there was any one mentor, but I've been lucky to meet lots of brilliant people who will kind of push me on my ideas or help me come up with new ones. And it's just nice to be surrounded by people that encourage you to go at it as well. Like Jo is great for that. Instead of, you know, will eye roll at me and then lay awake all night worrying about it, but she'll also say, like, absolutely, go for it, and I've got your back. And, you know, that makes such a big difference compared to having people in your life that just say, no, you've got enough going on, don't do any more stuff. Which I maybe need sometimes, just for a bit of balance.
You probably would, but Kathy's the kind of person that if I said that anyway, she would do it more. So, you know, it's sometimes easy to disagree. But in the same way that she says that, you know, we are just a really good team, you know, she drives me. I see how good she's done with the business and her work ethic. You know, I learned a lot from her when we were bringing Parasols from the very start. And, you know, we both did 14, 16-hour days. And, you know, we did it with a smile at the start of the day and a smile at the end of the day. And, you know, it's not always easy to work with your friends and to work that hard, but actually still be motivated and still want to do well. And, you know, we're still friends now, 15 years later.
And we didn't even have the drink problem then that we have now. I don't feel like we were even all that drunk.
And that's because we're drunk and we can't remember it.
Cool. Well, look, I wish you all the very best with That Mint podcast and everything else that you're involved with. Where can folks find out more about what you're up to?
You can go to the website, which is thatmintpodcast.co.uk, and the Twitter handle's the same. And I think there's an Instagram account. Kaylee, the one who's in charge of social media.
I love that you don't know.
I would say go to the website and that will direct you to everything else.
Very cool. Sure there are other things. There's blogs on there, episodes, links, things. There's actually a lady called Jane has started listening to our episodes, and she's got absolutely no finance experience whatsoever. So then she writes the blog, which is, from this episode, this is what I learned. And it's just cool. A couple of paragraphs, but it's really interesting to read that back, to get somebody's perception of the podcast that you did, and also to go, oh my God, yeah, we did talk about that, didn't we? Jeez. Yeah, I can't believe Jo is obsessed with being a pirate. What is going on? Generally a running theme.
Well, look, I wish you every success with it, and look forward to having you back on, I don't know, for your 100th episode celebration or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, wow,
yeah.
That sounds like a great occasion.
All the very best. Keep going, and look forward to seeing how it develops. Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you.
They're quite mad, the pair of them, but I do wish them well with That Mint podcast. The more voices there are, the better, and I know that they'll appeal to a whole load of folks out there that certainly wouldn't listen to me. So definitely check them out, give them a subscribe, and I hope you enjoy what they're up to. Okay, here's a review from Posh Spice from the USA. Fantastic. Probably not that one. Fantastic show, extremely helpful is the headline. Brilliant podcast, my favourite UK personal finance podcast. He tells it like it is and hammers home the key points. I've now automated savings, paying myself first, opened a lifetime ISA, and maximising my employer pensions contributions. Thanks, Pete. You're a top dog. From Tom. Tom, I think you might be using a VPN to say that you're from the US. If you're opening a lifetime ISA, you must be resident. But, you know, anyway, thank you for the review. That's the main thing. And folks, if you like what you're hearing, please do leave me a review wherever you're listening to me. If you can leave a review, it really helps if you do. It's meaningfulmoney.tv/iTunes if you're an Apple person. That's what Posh Spice did. Actually, I think his was on Stitcher, not on iTunes. So wherever you can leave me a review, do so. It helps people to hear about the show. Okay, 2 things to announce this week. I'd like you to help me, if you'd be so kind. I'd like to do a Q&A podcast just to mark 10 years of Meaningful Money. Pretty low key, but again, things have been overtaken somewhat by the coronavirus outbreak. But if you've got a question that you've always wanted to ask me, then now's your chance. So email me via the website, hit me up using social media, using the hashtag AskPeteM. Make sure you get that M on the end. Hashtag AskPeteM. I really don't want finance questions. I'm not going to answer them. Okay, I can answer those anytime. This is general interest stuff, so go nuts. Ask me anything. I'll answer those in the show the 6th of May. Second thing to mention is that we are frantically working right now to get the Build Wealth phase of Meaningful Academy ready for launch on the 1st of May. Now, this is the phase that deals comprehensively with building an investment portfolio, planning which tax wrappers to use, provides access to the best financial planning tool in the world for consumers, an app called Voyant Go. And if you want to be in at the start and to get the deepest discount there's ever going to be on the completed academy, you need to be on the mailing list. So head over to meaningfulacademy.com. Click at the top, click the little yellow button to show that you're interested in the Build Wealth phase, and we'll be in touch in the run-up to launch day. Exciting times, just a few more days to go. Okay, next time I'm bringing back Barney Whiter, aka The Escape Artist. This will be his 3rd session, I think, on the Meaningful Money podcast. But I'm bringing him back to get his take on this whole current situation of coronavirus from a FIRE point of view. It should be a really interesting counterpoint and complement, I think, to my conversation with Lars Kroyer last week. Okay, folks, that's it. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you enjoyed my conversation with Kathy and Joe. Questions and comments, as ever, go to the show notes, meaningfulmoney.tv/session370. Hope you enjoyed it, folks. Thank you so much for listening. Appreciate your company. Stay safe, and I'll talk to you next time.